Very good to see you. Hi, everybody. We've been busy. I want to thank the mayor, councilwoman for being there and always being there, all the work that you do, and other elected officials in the room. If you wouldn't mind, just for a moment, our country's in great trouble, and I think we're all agree with that. And as we speak, we have our bravest young men and women a long way away from home in harm's way. So let's just think about them just for a moment. Dear Lord, just protect these good and decent people who go to places and to fight for our freedom and the freedom of others. Keep them close to your heart. Keep them safe and bring them back to their families and their friends. Thank you. So listen, how much trouble can you be in if you still have young people in America who are willing to stand up and fight for freedoms like our forefathers did? That is the spirit of America that is still here among us. The president may take away our aspirations because we don't have leadership, but that doesn't mean America isn't great. And I've been traveling around talking about the greatness, the inspiration of America, the people who volunteer, who take time away from their families to serve, like all of you, to take time to be in the middle of this political battle that is all about America. That these folks go off and they fight for our freedom so that we can have these fights today. So we're doing very well out there. So I just wanted to share with you, I know my son was here somewhere, he's probably got off to park the car, just to give you a sense of what a day looked like. We were in Duncan. How many people know where Duncan is in Greenlee County? Just a few miles from the New Mexico border. That's part of your district, our district. And 18 hours later, we were at Glen Canyon Dam, which is almost the Utah border, for the 50th anniversary of the Glen Canyon Dam. And in between that, I think we served 350 hot dogs on the San Carlos Apache Nation. We got a chance to be at the down in Safford. They have the Salsa Festival, and all along the way, it is a daily event. This is beautiful, Arizona. I want you to think about this district we're in, because people from around the country, all they get to know is that this is a big, big place, isn't it? And I said, you know what's here? What's here is Monument Valley. What's here is Canyon de Chelly. It's petrified forest. It is the painted desert. The mayor and I were talking about the beauty of Marana, the beauty of Ojai Valley, the beauty of the White Mountains. And by the way, we haven't even gotten to the Grand Canyon and Sedona Red Rocks yet. This is our home. It needs to be treated better. Here in District 1, here in rural Arizona, this is rural America. We mine. We plow. We raise cattle. We manufacture. We educate here. We do all of those things that my opponent seems to now oppose. And it's unbearing to a lot of folks as I travel, and especially when you go to the Native American communities, many disproportionately serving their nation in the armed service. Many disproportionately serve. And yet, they're just so unnerved that the catastrophe that happened in our veterans' facilities would ever have happened in this country. I don't think any of us growing up thought for a minute that, hey, we may make some mistakes along the way, and of course we have. Both parties have. But really, at the end of the day, was this ever one of those that you thought we would make? So here in Arizona, the great place for veterans to be raised and go serve and then come and move here and retire and be part of it, we never really thought that was ever going to happen. So they're unnerved. They feel like there's no leadership. They feel like nobody's paying attention. They feel like this is just a game with no rudder at the back of the boat. And I get it. Mm-hmm. And I think I know when they're right. When the president can literally say, we have no strategy, that's bothersome. That's bothered people because we believe that. And now admitting that. And now imagine yourself a parent or a friend of someone who's serving overseas to hear that from a president say we have no strategy. Who would have thought? Well, who would have thought someone would have voted against keeping our Grand Canyon open? Keeping our parks open, at least twice. Who would have thought someone would have voted against protecting us at our border? Who would have thought that would have happened? Not in this district, Not here. Who would have thought someone who serves us in Congress would be part of the attack on coal? It was just a week ago. It was just a week ago that latest vote occurred where at the Cholla Power Plant, if you don't know where that is, that's Joseph City. That's not far from Holbrook and Winslow in Navajo County, Apache County, not far from Flagstaff. People work there, and I stood on a mound of coal that actually comes in from New Mexico. 3 days after, they were told that one third of that power plant would be turned off in 2 years. And in the end of 10 years, there'll be no coal there coming in at all. That's the deal. And they make those deals because the federal government with the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, is saying you either get this 1% or 1/10 of 1% cleaned up, or it's going to cost you $300-some-odd million to your taxpayer. That's the same issue that we had in Navajo Generating Station. Remember, we're closing a third of that down too. They receive all of their coal from Arizona. They receive all of their coal from Cayenne. Guess what? There are more Navajo and Native American folks working in that mine in a Navajo Generating Station than any other employer in the state. Those people are also upset. They don't understand why somebody would be voting against their interest to keep these wonderful facilities open. And I really appreciated what some of the workers were telling me when we were in Cholla. They said, you know what bothers us? Is that we have families, we have grandchildren, we are generational here in these communities, and you know the communities I'm talking about. If these places were so unsafe, why would we be here? If we're being told that we are polluting and we are hurting our own families, and that is really hard for them to swallow. They're upset, and I don't blame them. So as a father of 5 and as a business owner, I'm looking for what can we do to help? Well, back here in Arizona, who would have thought that someone representing Congressional District 1 would have cut $1 trillion, almost $1 trillion, out of Medicare in over the next 10 years? Who would have thought? Those are non-entitlements. Social Security and Medicare are not entitlements. We pay for those things. That's right. We put our money in, our employer matches. If you're self-employed like me and many others, you put your money in and then you match. That's the way it goes. That is not an entitlement, Anchor Patrick. That is a promise. That is a handshake and an agreement for a promise. And that has disproportionately hurt rural Arizona because the reimbursements and the reductions to Medicare send doctors away, send physicians out of our communities. It's already difficult getting them to stay. And now we're pushing back further and further. Then I get a chance to debate my opponent. I don't know if anyone watched it. It was on Horizon last week. And believe it or not, her response to our debt is, hey, listen, it's better than what it was the year before. So in Anchor Patrick's time, we've gone from 10 trillion to almost 18 trillion, but it's better than it was last year. It's not what Arizona does. And you watch the TV. My mother called me the other day and said, God, I'm not sure I like you anymore. You know, saying, but here, think about this. Think about this. And I told Anchor Patrick this the other night. I said, you know, we can't print money in Arizona. Mayor, can you print money in town? You got to live within your budget. Remember those conversations we were having during the primary where Mr. King and Mr. Quad and I all agreed you got to sit down at the table together with the family and say, hey, we got to make some cuts here. Hey, this didn't work. Hey, maybe this, you know, you just don't spend what you don't have. And it was tough. And we came together as cities and counties and the state and the business community and made it work. In our greatest, direst times in our economic history in Arizona, not since the Great Depression was it so bad. And we didn't whine about it. We came together and we found a way. And some of those things weren't very popular, whether they were cuts to government. Ed, did you want me cutting dollars into your city? Because then you have to make up for them. I mean, that's how it works. And that isn't fun. And there are tough choices left to be made. But here we put our arms around each other and said, we have got to grow out of this because we don't have a federal government that we can rely on. We came back on our own. And there are ways to do that. When we get back to Washington, D.C., some of those ideas that we had that pulled us out of the hole here, that's what I'm bringing back with me. That's the beginning. How about we start with what we started here 6 years ago? How about we put a moratorium on regulation for a couple of years? Just stop. Just stop. Just for a couple of years. Can we do that? Yeah, just a couple, I mean, America, look how, we're not 20 years old anymore. We got, we're 250 years almost. I mean, think about it. Can we just pause for a couple of years, give the communities a chance to catch up. Let's not, have more regulations coming down the pike. And that's where it started. It sends a message to the business community that we're on your side. Let's work together. Let's try to do this the right way. Let's just not have some bureaucrats creating rules and regulations that are now the law of the land. And that's the problem. So let's go back just a little bit and talk about both parties. Both parties help create our problem. Just the truth. Nobody's perfect. Both parties help create the problem. My vision is that we have got to find ways to work together. We are going to be a divided nation politically again for at least 2 more years. And if Republicans get all the things we want, we want the Senate back, we'll do better. We want the White House back, we'll do better. I'm all for that. But you have to lead. And you have to step out and say, I'm going to propose something, and it's risky. And you know it's risky. And I got in a lot of trouble for being risky. Prop 100 is a 1-cent sales tax. That's pretty dang risky in a Republican primary. It was the truth. But it was right. We took 3 years to get better, to make sure we weren't cutting more and more services, and promised that would go away. And it worked. And even my opponent opposed that. So not only is she opposed to all the cuts that we had to make, she was opposed to a Republican who was trying to find a solution so not to cut government even further. I'm trying to figure out where I'm the middle of the road bipartisan person is in that concept. Because the way I look at it, every moment that she's had a chance to work with her fellow Democrats and join Republicans to reopen the Grand Canyon or to delay Obamacare, she has objected to it and voted with Nancy Pelosi. That does not fit rural Arizona. That does not fit Congressional District 1. And I listen to this commonality no matter where I go. That does not fit. We do not need San Francisco running District 1 in Arizona. We need someone who's going to have mayors that they can talk to and constituents that when they come to Washington, D.C., the door is open in our congressional office to sit down and talk to constituents. We need to have a place so that they know that, hey, I've got a problem. Will somebody please help me? That phone gets answered. And it doesn't take too long for a veteran to call and get help. So I think we deliver a better product. I know we deliver a better vision. And when I was asked the other day, the press had asked me, well, what are you going to bring back from Washington when you go there? I said, pride and respect. That's what I'm bringing back, pride and respect. Where we can stand there arm in arm and say, we are doing what's right for America. And in the back of our mind, we are remembering our children and our grandchildren. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we were left with a better place than this is today. And we all know it. $18 trillion is abysmal. I thought it was billions were abysmal. Remember we talked, I was working with Ronald Reagan because we had billions in the hole. I was just in shock. It's 25 years ago. 25 years ago. And it was one of the reasons I decided to run. I didn't want to go to bed at night and then 10 years down the road decide, why didn't I do something about it? Why didn't we step out when we had a chance? Why didn't we stand up for our children? Why don't we have a strategy for our young, brave men and women who are fighting for us today? Why isn't our border secure? The contrast between me and my opponent are huge. She is now attacking me over children. Ladies and gentlemen, the largest expansion of government in I don't know how many decades it is, if not history, was done just under my leadership for this change in CPS to make sure we had the right balance of law enforcement and services for our weakest in Arizona, our children. It was the committee that I established that found the crisis in the first place. And here's the best part. In our House, 60 representatives, Mr. Leach will be one of those very short. 60 representatives in the House of Representatives. Every single one of them voted with me to pass that bill to protect our children in Arizona. That must mean they're worried. You don't spend millions of dollars on TV telling everybody how bad somebody else is, that I'm opposed to children. You're looking at the guy that walked on stage with Jerry Lewis in 1988 handing him a check for $1.8 million for our kids with muscular dystrophy. I don't think that's somebody who doesn't like children. Now, I have 5, and from time to time, I'm pretty sure they haven't been exactly happy with me either, for different reasons. But at the end of the day, I've spent my life for our children. And so they have to reach this far to destroy somebody's credibility and their person in order to win a seat. Shame on them. And I'm not going to let them stand in the way of the good and decent work that I've done and what we intend to do going forward. And you all know these are still difficult times, and when we were given the number that we needed to fund to make sure our children were safe, we funded every single nickel. Every single nickel. So as we're moving forward, this bipartisan conversation that we have down at the Capitol, we hear it was Democrats and Republicans that came together on highway user money. It was Ann Kirkpatrick and Jenna Napolitano who first took the highway user money out of the general fund in the first place. This is the first year it went back in, because the mayors and this counties and our infrastructure was falling apart, and it was still part of us having our hands and arms and shoulders together growing out of the crisis that Arizona was in. So we fund the things that we need, and we balance budgets, and we fight hard to keep businesses here, and we fight hard to bring other businesses in. And still today, we spend money in our K-12 system, we spend money in our university system, and maybe it isn't perfect. I don't think too many states went through what Arizona went through for the last 6 years. And if we can get the federal government to finally take their foot off our throat and let us move forward with our lands, with our water issues, with our mining. We have a mine that could open here in Superior. It's not that far away. Harry Reid won't let it off his desk. I think there's an awful lot of pathways that we have to now move forward. And I would love to have your continued support. I share with you that it is true we're going to get outspent by millions of dollars, but there's no place that I'm going that isn't excited to see someone showing up in the deepest pieces of our rural communities caring enough to listen. And I think for all the time that I've been in the state legislature, my door has been open to just about everyone, and I can't think anyone that's ever been closed to, other than who, probably my secretary with her 4th pot of coffee for me in the morning. So I have to tell you, that is how I do business, and I can only do it with your help. We have this big election is upon us. Our nation's in trouble. We need representation that you can count on. We need somebody that's not afraid to come back here and stand at this podium after they're elected and ask, what can I do to help? This is why I voted this way. I want to share with you what this is. How can you help me? How can we share? And you'll get that from me. You'll get that, and you all know that. So I'd love to open it up for a few questions. I think I know we have another event to get to, but does anybody have any thoughts or before I close? Or go ahead, Ron.
What does Las Vegas say about us taking over the Senate?
Oh, God. Okay, the question is, what is Las Vegas saying about taking over the Senate? There's some very good polling data out. Well, let me start with right here. Here in Congressional District 1, 3 weeks ago, we actually paid for our first poll. I'm not a believer in polls. I never paid for one in a primary race. I don't like it. They're not going to change my mind. If they tell me I'm -8 or +8, I'm still going to run every moment of the day until election day is over. So, but we wanted to make sure we knew exactly what the issues were that the folks in Congressional District 1 were most concerned about. This won't shock you, but it is a real turnabout from a year ago. A year ago, it was just all about the economy. That was the number one thing. This time, the number one piece is security. National security and the border. Listen, they're now tying, and they're right, tying national security interests and our border together. Number one, the numbers are higher than they were during 1070. That's how nervous they are. And we are +8. +8 over Anchor Patrick in a Democrat district with a female incumbent a month away from an election. There have been some other polls that have been +6 to 8 or whatever, but we know we have a lead because Anchor Patrick just does not well represent this district and doesn't speak to our interests. So that's what's going on in this district in particular. I don't know if Vegas is saying this, but I'm seeing multiple polls that are out there in very critical areas. You probably were watching the Iowa polls here with that race up there. I think she's a state senator. Ernst is now leading that poll by 4 or 5 points. I think North Carolina, a good friend of mine, Tom Tillis, he's the speaker of North Carolina, so we do have quite a relay. I'm really pulling for him. He's a good guy, and I think he's about behind 4. I think that there's a tough fight in the Kansas race. There's another tough fight, I think, in the Virginia race. If I got that right, Bill? Virginia's okay. I'm close. But the answer is that my understanding, if the election were held today, the Republicans will take 6 seats. That's how close it is. That's how close it is. So, and where did the trends go beyond that? It's hard to really figure. I think I watched the Doug Ducey, Fred Duvall debate last night. If you haven't seen it, I think Doug Ducey did an incredible job last night talking to the exact issues we're talking about here in education. How do you put $9,000 worth of each child who are sitting in a classroom? How do you better spend that to make sure that student can read and write, do math, and understand some history? And a little, government wouldn't hurt either. So I think he did a great job last night. I know the polls are up on him. Oftentimes, voters will react to momentum as well. So we feel that the momentum is heading in the Republicans' direction. I know that the president likes to think the economy really has recovered, and they'll just quit, being upset about it. But it's not recovered where I'm coming from. I mean, we have bits and pieces that are moving and getting better, but we're nowhere near where we should be. So I think the news right now is good. I think Republicans need to continue to do what we've been doing and continue to work. Go out and reach folks, shake hands. We were registering people on the San Carlos Apache reservation here just on Saturday afternoon. So they're still registering voters. I think that's great. This is as all elections are, they're about voter turnout, and we often struggle to make sure because a lot of folks who are getting their mail-in ballot, they might forget it, and that happens a lot. I forgot mine for about 4 days, and I'm like, gosh, I got to get my voting ballot in. But I mean, sometimes they just get put on the side. So when you're hearing about when Mr. Leach called you up and said, hey guys, I need some help, make sure you get over and get on the phones, there's a reason. Because there's a lot of voters who are going to be sitting out there waiting for someone to call them and say, that's right, let me turn Jeopardy off for a minute and I'm going to go do this. I do Jeopardy because it's one of my favorite pastimes if I'm ever near a TV. So that I think that's what's going on. The winds that are back because people are very disillusioned, and it's about leadership, and they're very disillusioned about it. So I think it is favoring us from the House perspective. I think there's a chance that the House Republicans can pick up maybe as much as 15 to 25 seats, depending on what kind of a year it is. And this is certainly one of the biggest races in the country. That's why you're seeing all this money coming in, and if they weren't worried about me, they wouldn't be, telling everybody how bad I am. It's just the way it is. Any other yes, ma'am?
Along the lines of education, what can you do to help our students in Common Core and election and all this evil able and extensive about that?
Well, first off, Common Core there needs to be a timeout on Common Core because that is not working. It is not working in rural communities, especially. Even if we all felt that Common Core was the right way to go, we don't have the teachers trained to even work on that curriculum. The parents who I have been talking to now for well over a year are very frustrated with the system that their students are coming home with, and they don't understand how to even explain it to them. Teachers are upset. When the American Education Association has said, we don't like this anymore, now you know you've got a bigger problem. I believe what we need in Arizona, Doug Ducey, our state treasurer, is right when he spoke about all the different formularies and all the different bureaucracies that we have to get dollars into the classroom. And he's right. It's very frustrating. This is 40, 50 years of watching these machinations. Okay, well, here's this rate and here's this formula to try to fit in to make everything even. And when Doug talks about how much money gets in, per student, it's $9,000 per student in a class of 30. It's $270,000 a year into a class. So his frustration is if we're putting that much money in, and maybe that's not as much as another state was doing or some other state, but that's not insignificant investments from our taxpayers right now. So maybe there's better ways that we can readjust these formulas. And it was one of those things we really had wanted to do in the legislature, kind of do a overall, but the economy, I think, just leaving it to others to go find better ways. And I think you're going to see that that's what Governor Ducey is planning on. I believe that what would really help is if we could block grant the federal dollars to the states without telling them, no, if you don't do what we're telling you, you're not going to get the money. I think the better way to do that is block grant those dollars to the states so that the states could put those dollars where they really need to be spent better. So that's one of the things I think we could do with our funding in a much better way. Mr. Lee?
Go ahead.
As a conservative Republican, sir,
Yeah.
what do you think we ought to do about John McCain?
Yeah, well, I will tell you this, that I have known John McCain for decades, and we just do not agree on, especially on his recent bill that passed, and I've been very vocal about it. He believes that there was an opportunity to move, I think, border security forward with moving this bill out of the Senate. But there are just clearly not enough votes. I will tell you, if you decided to take the pathway of citizenship out of that bill that he sent over, I think it would have been an entirely different dynamic entirely. I think that bill would have moved quickly. I would have found the problem we have with the border with this immigration reform is you can't sit across the seat from this president and shake his hand and believe that the border will get secured if you make a deal.
It's already
And
secured.
I know, I forgot about that. I was just down there a few weeks ago, in fact, I'm heading on back down, I think, next week or the week after. So therein lies the problem. How can you negotiate with someone who you're pretty sure isn't going to follow through? And I think that's the problem. So short of that, I don't think I can't tell you there's a finer American serving in Congress that had served his country than John McCain. I just can't. And even though I can disagree with him, it's really fun arguing with Senator McCain. For those of you who have gone through that experience, I'm sure you would agree. But, I think the guy, this ISIS crisis, in my view, would not be happening if John McCain was the president. Just wouldn't. So thank you for that. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I have a question about this Marine that's
Yeah.
down in jail in Mexico. And on Fox News, they were saying, excuse me, it wasn't on Fox, it was out of the Phoenix station, that there is a representative locally who's going to get him out. That was yesterday, I heard it by today.
Yeah.
Is that happening?
Well, let me share with you, I haven't been public with my work on Sergeant Tamarisi's issue at all, but I have, for now months, have written to the Consular General, the American ambassador, the ambassador from Mexico, demanding his release. This is a soldier who fought in war. Clearly, this man is in need of attention and medical support. I recognize that folks make mistakes at the border. I'm guessing a few more folks who cross from the south to the north made more mistakes than we do going south. Just a mathematical conclusion I came up with. But I believe that the president needs to step up, make a phone call to the president of Mexico Peña and say, Mr. President, we can have a better working relationship than having trains come in with children on top of them. The inhumanity of that in of itself is unnerving, and yet you still have one of our soldiers here, and I think they need to be, demanding his release immediately until he comes home and gets the help that he needs.
Well, please tell me that it wasn't Ann Kirkpatrick who was the representative who was going to bring him.
You know what? I don't know that, but I would tell you in a minute. If Ann Kirkpatrick came home with Mr. Tamarice tomorrow, I would welcome her and thank her. Because and so from my perspective, I don't know that any political games are getting played, but I would share with you that I continue to reach out to the Mexico Embassy and their affiliates and try to get help down. And I've not said that to anybody because I didn't want it to get political, because I think other people are worried. But Congressman Salmon went down and saw Sergeant Tamarice just a few months ago. So, and that was reassuring to me that someone I know had eyes on him. So I think hearings start tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken, on this particular issue. So I'm hoping in Congress they're having a meeting in I forget what committee it is, but tomorrow, October 1st, I think it's tomorrow, to get some answers about what to do. So thank you for that question. It's way too long that he's waited to come home.
Andy, question on Obamacare. We continue to see it crumble under the weight of itself. We found out late last week, the beginning of this week, and I guess this is the beginning, where all those that have signed up are not paying, so that the numbers are not close to what they're. So when you're back there in January, and we have both the Senate and the House, what could we do? And the second part of that question is, can you give us an update on the lawsuit on Medicaid expansion here in the state?
Yeah, let me, kind of a few multiple questions here. The first step is I want to welcome you to the anniversary, 1-year anniversary of the rollout. We remember the rollout for Obamacare a year ago. Still seems to be there's a few problems with that, to say the very least. There's multiple problems. There's folks who actually have been detected weren't citizens. Imagine that. I know that wasn't a concern of anybody. And anyway, but many of them are getting moved out. The question is, we don't know how many more are on there. So that's one issue. The next question is the tax credits that folks are expecting to have come through online. Remember, everyone's financial situation is regularly changing. So what somebody's tax situation was a year ago may be different than what it is today. So there may be another problem here very much not around the corner about who's actually getting qualified for those and who is not. The third answer is that because the rate, my Democrat colleagues keep talking about the rate increases coming down, not your costs are coming down, the costs over last year aren't as high going up. It's kind of interesting math speak, but that's the answer. So it's not as high as it once was. Well, when you raised them up so high last year, I would imagine there was probably some room to help. But these rates are still high. They're still rising. And that's because we did not solve the problem putting government in charge of 1/5 of our entire economy. I know that would shock everybody, that having government run these things, it's not quite better yet. There's a reason for that. There's a reason because the private sector is more efficient. There's more incentives, they involve more people, and and by the way, Republicans didn't have an alternative. We had some pieces that said, well, let's trade over state lines. I get that. That was, in my view, that wasn't going to solve all our problems either. The best piece that they have in there is a piece about pre-existing conditions. I agreed with that. However, they went about it all wrong. What the government should be doing is helping us. There's 5 pieces that drive the cost of healthcare. Let's face it, if you're a healthy family and you're just going in because you have a sneeze or your annual exam, it shouldn't cost you $800 to $1,500 a month in premium. You are not destroying our medical system. What's going on is our cancer costs, our heart costs, our transplant costs, diabetes, aging, Alzheimer's, those are the things that are driving our costs high. That's where we should concentrate on putting dollars in and pooling funds so that where we're having the very best are able to go through and help make the cost for that service the least expensive, and a place for folks to go who have those pre-existing conditions. Remember, if you don't have a pre-existing condition, you can still get insurance, even before Obamacare. You can come, I'm in that business. You can come see me and say, well, you haven't had insurance for 2 years, so if you have any pre-existing conditions, they're not covered. They go, I don't have any. Well, guess what? You have a policy. What we're talking about, the folks who are driving these costs, are those who have illnesses that we need to be able to help. And there's a way for us to come together to solve those issues. And your last question, I think, had to do with the lawsuit on Medicaid expansion. It is still sitting in court. Sadly, I'm going to guess that we may get there, but I don't think it'll happen before the end of October. But it could. I mean, they can come out with something more quickly, but I haven't gotten any sense of what their thought was. Remember, we sued over the constitutionality of that bill. When the Medicaid expansion first came out, my recommendation was to the governor was that she send it to the voters, because we weren't going to get 2/3 on that unless we were able to amend it to something more like I described. And the governor just wasn't really interested in that. So in Arizona, when we passed Proposition 108, required a 2/3 vote to raise taxes. So this hospital assessment is that factor that we sued on. So we're waiting to find out, does Prop 108 apply to an increase in assessment? And I think it does, which is why I'm part of the lawsuit. So, and it was interesting because when folks were talking about that, they said, oh, you can never get 2/3 out of the legislature. That is just not true. The year before Medicaid expansion passed, we actually gave the nursing home community the opportunity to also create an assessment unto themselves to draw down federal dollars to help reduce our costs in nursing homes. Guess what? I got 2/3 of the vote. And I reminded the Medicaid expansion folks, I said, we can do this if we do it right. So it's not about being in the way and not moving some agenda forward. It's about finding the right way and staying within the Constitution. So I think they still have a constitutional problem. If that doesn't fit 108, I don't know what does. So we'll have to see how that goes. Good luck to you, by the way. And you're going to a great building. And I will finish up with this. I am so grateful. I have been able to serve for 8 years in the Arizona House of Representatives, elected 4 different times, and also elected by my peers to leadership. And I've just been so proud of this state. And I've told this story before. I'll never forget. Dean Martin was the treasurer at the time, and it was true that we weren't sure we had payroll. Those are really true stories. And for someone who's been in the aerospace business and made payroll, and the insurance business and the banking business, those are frightening days. And I'm telling you, there's no one person who can say, I saved Arizona. There's no one person that can say, this was my idea. It took leadership from all of us. And it took the support of the community to stand with their elected leaders. It took the Mayor Honeys of the world to come in and say, we'll stand with you. Let's do this together. That's what made it work. And Arizona got out. And now we need to just get better. And I intend to go back there and finish what I've started and hope that we make things better. So thank you for giving me this great opportunity to run for Congress and to represent you. I will not let you down. And America is just too important to all of us. And it's not time to slip up anymore. So thanks for having me.